Hi there. I'm Lindley Hinserling. I'm Chief Product Officer here at Aerospike. And I've got Rick DeMare here with me. Rick runs the group at Starburst, and he's director of OEM sales there and partnerships. Rick has been in the big data analytics space for more than 20 years and has run go-to-market and business development efforts at a number of companies. He's been in this data game for a while and worked on embedding Query Engine and the connectors as part of customers' client-facing private offerings. And that's what we're doing here at Aerospike. We announced earlier, my CEO, Sue Iyer, announced that in his talk that kicked off the sessions this morning. And you'll see some product announcements from us coming down the road. We wanted to have Rick walk us through the capabilities of Starburst. And with that, I'll ask Rick to go ahead and kick it off. It's really one of the premier technologies out there, and we're super excited to be partnered up with Starburst. Rick?
Thanks, Lindley. Everybody, I'm Rick DeMare, and as Lindley said, I run Embedded Technologies OEM here at Starburst. And what I'm here to talk to you about today is the ability to bring SQL to your Aerospike infrastructure. I'm also going to tell you about how Starburst as an organization leverages our products at other enterprises with big data requirements. Really what we focus on here at my organization is trying to give our clients faster time to insight, meaning how quickly can we give you access to your analytical information so that you as an organization can make a relevant business decision. In today's world, that has been pretty complicated. So Deepak Chopra said, all great changes are preceded by chaos. Well, we've lived through a whole bunch of chaos. Back in 2019, only about 1/3 of the workforce worked from home. But we all know by March of 2020, we all work from home. The market for how we did anything changed. I called it the COVID economy started to come about in bloom. Crowded malls and restaurants were empty. They had to figure out different ways to commercialize their products, the way we use communication systems, the way we use entertainment. All these things changed, and I would say they permanently changed. If you recall, the way the United States and the world reacted to COVID was almost like an economic wartime response. Everything moved online, and as a result, the adoption of new technologies saw this glory that will probably never be seen again, unless, of course, we're all locked up, right? And hopefully that won't happen. You got everybody adopting new technologies all at once, and they were forced to do so, and that has changed how analytics and how technology is going to be used forever. So the way we surmise this into the data and analytics space is that in this new world, this post-COVID economy, hopefully post-COVID economy, the ability to adapt to change really is a strategic advantage. And that's what we want to talk about today, is how do you use your data in this new world as a strategic advantage? Because, if we can adapt to change, we can create opportunity. But in today's world, that opportunity is met with more data than we've ever dealt with before and completely different expectations from our customers. This COVID economy has changed users' expectations about how they're going to interact with technology. And we look at this, when we look at this from an analytics perspective, online, it's about how quickly can we get the information we want as we're shopping or whatever we're doing. When it comes to analytics, it's how quickly can I get to my answer? How quickly can I get to an insight? And in today's world, that creates a problem. And I like to call the problem the 4 R's. How do I get the right data to the right user at the right time and for the right cost? Because analytic use cases no longer span one source of data. They span multiple sources of data. And the data we're using is doubling every 18 to 24 months. And as all this data is increasing in size and volume and data sources, it's all being moved to the cloud. So recent studies suggested that 90% of all analytic workloads are moving to the cloud. Well, that seems to be about common sense for most of us now. But what is surprising is that all of that 90% is moving to different cloud infrastructures. So not only are we moving data to the cloud, and not only is it increasing at a rapid rate, it's all moving to separate cloud infrastructures. And we as organizations are moving them to separate cloud locations. So the fact of the matter is data is literally everywhere. We still have data on-prem. We have data in the cloud. We're running it in a hybrid mode. The cloud infrastructures have multiple availability zones, so it's across region. We're running it on multiple cloud infrastructures. And then in many on-prem infrastructures, we're running multiple instances of these systems. From a data source perspective for analytics, we've got enterprise data warehouses, we've got cloud data warehouses, we've got data lakes, data lakehouses, NoSQL stores, operational data stores, and technology on the edge. And it's all coming at us in different data volumes, which have different values and different velocities at which we take it in. The usage of the data has different concurrencies. And then we have these different data types and formats that we need to deal with, all with different security, governance requirements, which lead to, egress costs, right? So we've got security and governance, but then if I'm moving from one cloud or one region to another to shuffle data and try to merge it together, I might get charged for it. If I'm moving data from one country to another, right, I might not be able to do that from a compliance perspective and from a regulation perspective. Because some people have that data must stay in your own zone requirement. So it's a mess, right? More of a mess than I've seen in my rather longer than I'd care to suggest, although Lindley teed me up and said I've been in it for 20 years, time in the industry. So Einstein said, the world as we create it is a process of our thinking. It can't be changed without changing our thinking. So what I'm saying is we have to change our thinking if we're going to deal with data today. And to do that, we have to address the elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room is the data warehouse. For the longest time, it's been called this single source of truth. It dates back to the 1970s when Bill Inman coined the term. At a high level, it means I'm going to put all my information in this nice place. I'm going to clean it. I'm going to have it modeled in a manner that anybody can access it, and it's going to be beautiful. The problem is, it never really was like that. It was delusional 20 years ago, and in this COVID economy, it's impossible. The average enterprise architecture has 5 to 7 major sources of analytical data today. 70% of which of those data sets are disconnected from one another. And 80% of them lack common tools across them. Meaning data is everywhere, again, and we can't get access to it with a common way. So what does that result in? What's the issue? We have to have data engineers take that information, move it, copy it, ETL it, ELT it, and try to bring it to this mythical location called the data warehouse so that we can access it, just to start the analysis. The process is manual, it takes too long, it's too complex, and there's too many dependencies on the process. In many cases, when you have these NoSQL databases in systems like Aerospike, there's no SQL access to these systems. Right? So they have to use code to move data from point A to point B, which slows the process because our analytical people, they just want to use SQL. Last but by no means least, when we're moving data, we're copying data. And that becomes a compliance and a security issue for our organizations. So in summary, this mythical single source of truth is at best a narrow view of your data. It's a small fraction of what's available. At worst, it's going to strangle your ability to adapt to change, to innovate from a business perspective, and to take advantage of your opportunity. So we need to change our focus. We need to change our focus from the single source of truth to how fast we can get an insight of our system. This is what the dilemma looks like today. When we ask a business question, how long and what do I have to do to get to a business answer? The problem is today's technologies tend to focus on, hey, we're data warehousing technology X, and our queries can go and respond in a millisecond. Well, what good is a millisecond response time if it's taken me 6 weeks to get the data through the system to get to that millisecond response time? It's not very good at all. We need to get to that insight as quickly as possible. So let's talk a little bit about what Starburst does and what we bring to the table. So over the past 10 years or so, organizations in the data warehousing space have evolved. They've technically gotten a lot better. I give them credit for that. One of the more popular ones in the marketplace today that a lot of people have heard of is Snowflake. And what they built and what they created from a technology perspective and what they proved in the industry is that you could separate data storage from data compute, and the network was fast enough to shuffle the data between the storage component and the compute component to make queries go fast. And that was a first. In old data warehousing systems, we needed an appliance. We had to, scale. We couldn't scale the system based on data storage and compute. We can scale those in today's world separately. We can have an X amount of storage, X amount of compute, and we can make queries go as fast as they want because the network's fast enough to shuffle it. In the old days, we had to guess, right? How much, how big of a box did I need to get to make this go fast? The problem with today's technologies is that you still have to put all the data in one location. And that takes a while. That's a long and arduous process. Starburst, we want you to think of as a single point of access. The way you connect to it is just like a data warehouse, except we don't store data. What we are is the compute element of these systems. We are just compute. We can connect to any data store. So if you think about it, if we can separate storage from compute, and the network is fast enough to shuffle the data, why should we care where the data is stored in the first place? And the answer is we don't. We don't need to care. So let me tell you a little bit about what our technology does. Because what we're trying to do is put you in a position whereby your team can achieve the following goals, right? Number one, your data engineers can reduce complexity. Right? What if they could go into these systems and they don't have to move data from point A to B all the time? You need a new answer. What if you could still get fast and reliable queries when you did that? And you could still ensure data security? What if your analysts could access all your data with SQL? No more waiting for data access. Have a reduced reliance on the security team to give them access to these systems. And they could self-serve the data with their own BI tool. And what if the line of business could simply just ask a question and get an answer and have access to all your data sets in a secure way? That's what we're doing here at Starburst. As I mentioned, we're a query processing layer, right? What we provide is a massively parallelized, ANSI SQL compliant query processing unit. The difference is we have multiple connectors that come with this processing unit. So not only do we process data, we can secure it, we can mask it, we can encrypt it, we can do fine-grained coarse controls so we know the users can only see what they're supposed and allowed to see. And Starburst as an organization can connect to dozens and dozens and dozens of different data stores. They could be data lakes, they could be traditional data warehouses, they could be NoSQL stores or streaming engines. What was announced today by Aerospike is the ability for us to connect directly with an Aerospike instance. So we become the SQL engine for Aerospike. Not only are we the SQL engine, but the system can federate across multiple instances of Aerospike. So if you're one of those locations that has multiple instances of Aerospike, you could actually connect and query all three, in this case, in this scenario, instances of Aerospike with one SQL query without ever having to move data. In the Starburst world, we can actually federate across all these data stores in a single query. We can then also query across infrastructure layers. So when I was talking earlier about how data is everywhere, right? We support that. So your data can be on-prem, your data can be in the cloud, your data can be in multiple clouds, multiple availability zones. We can federate across all of those with a single query, and the data doesn't have to move. We can even get into the position where we can go into different countries where they have sovereignty laws and the data doesn't have to move. We can work in those scenarios to get a single answer, further eliminating egress cost as well. So let me tell you a little bit about how you connect to Starburst. Your consumption layers can be any SQL front end. It's bring your own BI tool, it's bring your own analytic tool. Your tool will connect to Starburst, and then Starburst is a one-to-many system. We can operate and then run SQLs across one or many of these systems, or we could federate across several of them at the exact same time. So a little bit about Starburst. The company's been around for just a little bit over 3 years. The technology we're leveraging is based on open source that has been leveraged in the industry for over 10 years. It was originally open source that was leveraged and utilized and created by Facebook. It was something called Presto. Now, if you think about Facebook, they were that first digital native organization that became overloaded with massive sources of data and needed to give a quick response back to its user population, right, to draw you into Facebook, to keep you to keep you engaged. It was later adopted by big companies like LinkedIn and Netflix, but these are companies that have massive engineering benches and the dollars to support it. So to make a long story short, eventually most of the key founders of the open source technology ended up leaving and founding their own company. The name of the open source project ended up changing to something called Trino, and all the main founders of the Trino pipeline now work here at Starburst. We bootstrapped ourselves for about the first 18 months of our existence, took no outside money, proved our philosophy, brought up some of our first customers, and then over the past 18 months or so, we've done 3 rounds, raised over $414 million at a $3.4 billion evaluation, and we like to think of it as being the smart money in the valley. You can add any joke you want to have in, add there at that point. Our customer list is what I think is most impressive. We work with the who's who in the business, the big and the small, the innovative, and our NPS scores are why they stay with us and why we continue to grow at a rapid rate. But now let's talk about a couple of customers. First, I'm going to hand it back over to Lenley, and he's going to talk about one of our joint customers together. Lenley?
Yeah, so this is a customer that I cannot name. It's a large brokerage that has spoken at our summits before. What I'll say is that, as Rick said, we wind up having multiple clusters out there, and we're known for our performance at scale. And here we have hundreds of terabytes of data in a warm store, and tens of terabytes at the edge. And the question is raised, right? There are compliance teams that need to be able to have visibility across all of that data as a part of their job. They're not going to learn a new data model, how to program in something besides SQL. They have tools they've built that support SQL. They're data engineers who need to do data discovery against all that data, to think of new applications of that data. We have other customers that, as Rick said, have data in multiple countries, in multiple geographies with different regulatory issues, right? And so the ability to see across all of that is what's at stake here for us. The other thing that I have to say about Starburst, it's a natural match for us. We are a massively parallel distributed engine for handling data. Starburst is a massively parallel query engine and ability to reach out and to scale as you have more data, as you have more users in an elastic way. And so it's a natural matchup for us, because quite often we'll have not only hundreds of terabytes, as in this example, we might have many petabytes of data. And being able to efficiently query that in an easy way with tools people are used to opens up visibility to the wider enterprise with our customers. And we looked around for a long time for a technology. We came to a conclusion that Trino was the right technology about the time that Starburst was starting up. We've followed that. We've had a Trino connector for a while now. We've had a few customers deploy it, but their ask was, gee, I don't want to have to build this from open source. I don't want to have to support it myself. With large enterprises, that's a non-starter sometimes. So we came to one customer who basically said, I'd like to buy this from Aerospike for the purposes of having SQL access to Aerospike data in a meaningful way. And so Rick and I started talking, and we've announced a product, Aerospike SQL, powered by Starburst. That'll be coming out probably in the next quarter. But we're really excited about it. It gives this new visibility in a way that can match the size and performance. So we're not going to throttle it on our end with the high-speed networks that are available. People can do things like look at my data that I have in the EU, look at my data that I have on the West Coast, on the East Coast here, and be able to get a complete picture of patterns of access if they're a retailer, of trading if they're a financial services company. And so this is a big win for us.
Great. Thank you, Lenley. To kind of conclude on, a couple of things here related to, why Aerospike SQL powered by Starburst. It comes back down to time to insight. We're going to enable your SQL users, your BI users to leverage the tools they're familiar with to essentially scale your queries on Aerospike. From that, we'll allow you to federate across multiple clusters of Aerospike, query the data in place, and do fast with the fastest query engine on the market today without having to move that data, which will significantly reduce complexity. That really ends up being the value proposition behind this joint offering that Aerospike's offering its clients today. One of the ways our customers use Starburst is epitomized by one of our longer time clients, and that is Comcast. So, I've given kind of a COVID economy theme. I'm going to go back to that on this one. So as COVID hit, the chief marketing officer over at Comcast came to our team and said, can you help us? And we said, okay, well, tell us about it. Well, the issue was, COVID hit, everybody came home, sat on their couch, and started watching things online. So Comcast, the cable division, said, that's going to be a problem for us. We need to run a program so that we can get our subscriptions up for our cable subscribers. And they're like, great, we've got all that data. We've got set-top data sitting in Hadoop, and we've got all our CRM and information about our customers in Teradata. Let's combine that together and create a program. I think we can increase our premium memberships if we do that. Well, the problem was their data engineers came back and said, okay, for us to test that hypothesis, it's going to take us 18 months to bring those data sets together. So, by no surprise, they came to Starburst. And what Starburst was able to do was test the hypothesis for the CMO and actually prove it in 5 weeks. That hypothesis turned into a program that created an extra $200 million in net new revenue because they were able to query the Hadoop instance and their Teradata instance without having to move any of their data and run their analyses across it, target their clients appropriately, and then start running a marketing campaign across it. That was the first step of our journey, though. The next step of their journey is, like many organizations, they were going through this digital transformation to the cloud. And one of the steps in that digital transformation was to actually migrate from Teradata to an Amazon S3 instance. Well, migrations are painful. Moving to the cloud, sounds great potential. It's still a migration. And the disruption upon your teams is the problem, right? Every time you guys need access to your data sets in Teradata in this example, well, you got to be worried whether the system is going to be up, which means your teams have to work on the weekend. You're worried about bringing the system down. With Starburst, they were able to actually use our technology to manage the migration. Starburst made the data set consistently available as the migration was taking place, allowed the migration teams to work regular hours instead of over the weekend, keeping people happy. But most importantly, there were no disruptions as they were moving towards the cloud because they were able to leverage Starburst as the intermediary. Today, with Starburst, they're increasing their sources of data and they're increasing their analytical processes across data. So both the BI, AI, and ML practices they are running are literally going from time to insight 93% faster than they could before. And it's all because we're eliminating the traffic jam that is created when we have to push all that data to one monolithic location. So, in concluding, why would an organization go with Starburst specifically? Well, we can securely process massive amounts of data at scale. All right, so we can process data and scale our systems up and down very, very easily. We can connect and federate data across multiple systems without requiring any data movement whatsoever. We uniquely support data on any infrastructure. So as you're going through your transformations, as you're living in a world where data is still on-prem, moving to the cloud, moving to multiple cloud infrastructures across multiple zones, we can still connect, we can still federate, and we can still do it at a massive scale. And last but by no means least, we allow you to bring your own analytics to our system so that we are that one point in which you can connect to all your data and process it. So I want to thank everyone for their time today. We appreciate it. These slides are available for download and sharing if you'd like. I'm Rick DeMare. I thank you for your time. Lindley?
Yeah, thanks for that, Rick. And what I will close with is this, that our chairman of the board now and former CEO John Dillon always told our salespeople, don't try to sell to anybody who has just one database because they're too small to really be of the value we're looking for from a customer. Now, that's a little bit of hyperbole, but really the thing that we want to leave you with is that we have OEM this to go against multiple Aerospike clusters and to give us a powerful SQL capability. But as Rick pointed out, this is a solution for a federation of all your data sources. We are one of. Our model of providing this is both as we can convey Starburst for use with just Aerospike, but we also have a connector we provide independently that will allow you to federate Aerospike data with your DB2 data, your Oracle data, your Cassandra data, whatever it is, with different warehouses and such. And that capability is something that we believe strongly in, that there's a horses for courses model of deploying data management now. And Starburst gives us all the tools we need to really have the visibility to gain insights and drive our businesses forward. So, Rick, thanks so much for the work we did together. And thanks so much for this presentation.
My pleasure. Thank you.